United States government is going to make sure that China doesn't own a gigantic social media company in the United States. Whether it's this bill, whether it's this president, it feels like
OMG, don't they have bigger things to worry about? I mean, yeah. I think the main points of contention that I've heard about TikTok being bad, quote unquote, at least from Congress perspective, or the people that want it banned, are security risks and basically Chinese assets, so to speak, when it comes to U.S. consumption. So if TikTok is owned by the Chinese or whatever, they want like the backing of it to divest so it could be sold to a U.S. owner, which why the fuck would you give up that type of leverage? Why would you give up that level of influence and power just to sell it? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I was thinking in the beginning when I first heard that it was going to be banned, it was some type of like just overall basis for security risk, and they needed to implement a new system so that our information wasn't getting quote unquote leaked. But I didn't know it was just as simple as like, yo, you got to sell it to an American, basically. Like, that's really the gist of the situation. We need an American owner, and we need to be able to put whatever information or push whatever information that we want to push out to the kids that they say that they're trying to save. Let me hear what else you got to say.
Like, the mood on Capitol Hill has shifted. In particular, you mentioned,
I don't believe it's about security though, because like I hear people again like daily, especially like I said when I went to that tattoo shop. I'm like, bro, I hear people daily tell me about, oh, I was looking up this one thing, or I was talking about this one thing, and then like 2 seconds later, an ad popped up for that exact thing that I was having a conversation about, or this ad popped up about some shit that I was looking up on another person's computer, or like if we're talking about security risks and shit like that, like TikTok is far from the worst perpetrators of that crime. We talking about security risks and like data brokers and shit like that. Like, there have been people that have gone through other means outside of TikTok that the U.S. doesn't seem to want to regulate at all in any capacity. Bro, I can literally see a nigga die on X right fucking now. I can see somebody get destroyed, their life end. When I saw that dude that was saying free Palestine, I forgot his name, but he burned himself in like support of free in Palestine and everything like that. I saw that on Twitter. The entire burning from start to finish, I saw on Twitter, uncensored. Gore, porn, all types of shit on Twitter, talking about what we want kids to be filtered into. I see misinformation on my timeline regularly when it comes to that app. Don't get me started on Facebook. It's mad shit that you can see. If we're talking about security risks and our information being so easily accessible, TikTok is just, you could say that they're on the list, but so is every other platform. Every other one. If you want to talk about regulation and safety and misinformation, every other platform is just like that. It's just, I guess that it's because it's American owned. That's literally the only reason. If you weren't so hypocritical in this, I think people would still have a problem with it, obviously. But you wouldn't be looked at as such a pussy. You wouldn't be looked at as such a pussy if you were consistent across the board.
that briefing.
And it wouldn't look like such an obvious move to basically attain a level of power because you feel like you're losing it. Because you see so many users are using something that isn't like a U.S. owned product.
I was just at South by Southwest, and word on the street at South by Southwest was that the members of the select committee who saw the secure briefing were utterly convinced by what they saw in that briefing. And I think as that information gets out and we learn more what happened in there,
you
we're
can
going to
say
see
YouTube
more and
too.
more.
And would the dark web count too? Shit is scary out here.
I'm saying
Bipartisan support to make sure that the Chinese government doesn't own a massive media distribution platform in the United States. I agree with you there. I think what happens in the Senate is totally unclear.
Do you buy this line from lawmakers that it's not a ban, it's a forced sale that could lead to a ban, or is this at its heart, is it a ban?
Yes, in its way. I mean, I know you call me on CNBC to get one.
it's a ban of ownership.
and technical, so here I am. The bill regulates the app stores, right? It regulates the infrastructure providers. It names TikTok only to define what kinds of businesses the app stores and infrastructure providers cannot do business with. So the bill doesn't actually directly ban TikTok. It just tells Apple and other infrastructure providers, you can't have TikTok here. Okay, so that means TikTok can sell itself. I think there's enough money on the line from both domestic and foreign investors in TikTok to say, okay, we've got to make sure we protect our capital, our investment. We've got all these users. We're making all this money. We should get out of this definition of foreign adversary controlled application and make sure we can still do business with Apple and the other providers in the United States that we need. So it is not directly a ban. That is technically accurate. If TikTok remains in China's
There are
control,
so many
yeah,
issues that we need to resolve in this country, and yet these people decide to focus on banning TikTok.
Well, I feel like no person who's actually, you know what I'm saying, focused on the actual issues is going to even have a perspective on the quote unquote harm of TikTok. I feel like any person it's just, you have to be like a massive capitalist to genuinely see TikTok as like the core issue and be like, oh shit, like this is the one that we really got to focus on. Literally, I can't think of anything outside of the fact that it's non-American owned. Like that's literally it. You can't bring up any solid point. You could say security risk. How do you say that and then not have a problem with any other platform?
I dead as seen a man shoot up a mosque on X, with white users laughing at it. No fucking way we are speaking on TikTok's security.
It's going to get banned because all these companies in the United States are not allowed to do business with it.
So a very significant roadblock, perhaps. Neil, I'm curious, because this is all happening while Reddit is on its roadshow, a social media company as well, meeting with investors. They say that their content moderation is kind of multi-layered and that they, have a lot of self-policing within their various communities, as well as some overarching rules that kind of define what's acceptable or not acceptable on their platform. Obviously, Reddit is U.S.-based, largely U.S.-owned.
Like, bro, you know how many mass shooters they say spawn from forums that have been like owned by the US and, you know, been quote unquote secretly monitored, and we got a tip about this thing but didn't do anything about it until after the shooting occurred. Like, in terms of protecting Americans and shit like that, all the material, all the nefarious shit is American owned that harms people the most. How do you get here? And it's such a huge level of censorship to me that is able to take place because there aren't like, TikTok doesn't have like the level of authority. Like it's not like a one information shop. So like TikTok has competitors, even though there are other platforms that you can get information from. TikTok is a competitor that isn't like the standard competitor. So banning it really is like easy. Like obviously people have a problem with it, but like at the end of the day, if it ends up getting banned and people can't use it, they're just going to filter into the other ones that are already accessible.
But do you think there are any implications?
Ban every platform. I don't care anymore. Yeah, no, let's not do that.
For Reddit, as we think about maybe the potential ad gains that they could get from this, but also the increased attention on Capitol Hill in terms of content on these platforms, moderation on these platforms, and just the overall risk of regulation that's facing social media right now.
Yeah, I think Reddit has a market opportunity here, as does YouTube, as does Meta, right? Donald Trump famously said, I don't want to ban TikTok because it will help Meta. There's an opportunity to take market share away from TikTok here. And TikTok has really dominated the headlines in terms of where users are going, especially young users are going. The interesting thing about the regulatory piece is that the United States government cannot pass speech regulations against Reddit and Meta and Google because they're U.S. companies. They have First Amendment rights. But it is able to say, we've evaluated the algorithms in the speech on TikTok, which China owns, and said, actually, we have a very compelling government interest in making sure China doesn't control these algorithms and indoctrinate people into whatever they want or produce whatever disinformation they want, especially in an election year. So there's a very big difference in kind in sort of regulatory protection, whether you're a U.S. company or a company domiciled outside the United States, where our government can't actually regulate Reddit directly in terms of moderation, but it feels comfortable saying, okay, we can regulate a Chinese company.
I don't know, bro. This is bad across the board. I don't use TikTok to be honest. So, it doesn't really mean anything to me. I hear that bag on TikTok for its creators is also really, really lucrative. So it was a lot of people crying about like their livelihood and whatnot, which I take seriously. Like, I mean, obviously it's not a good thing that people would potentially lose their livelihood or anything like that. But for the reason, I didn't think it would. When I first heard that it was potentially getting banned, I thought it was for something that was like so much more intricate and so less hypocritical than it actually was. I didn't know it was over something like this. I mean, in terms of marketing, I would say that would probably be the biggest hit. Like, people market their businesses. They have business models running through TikTok, algorithmically speaking. And like, if you could like even prove where your numbers come from on your analytics, like TikTok is a large, like it plays a large part in some people blowing up. It plays a large part in some people getting sales. It plays a large part in a business model for a lot of folks. Especially recently with COVID, a lot of people started businesses through the marketing that they do on TikTok because it's so easy to go viral over there. I just don't think that even if your livelihood isn't based off TikTok, you've probably benefited in some way using it for marketing purposes. If you are like a self-employed person or you own a business, you know, so for people like that, I mean, obviously it's not ideal. It's not good. It shouldn't be like an implemented or acceptable format for the U.S. to take, and for people to argue it so hard. And when I say people, I'm talking about the people like this. For them to argue it so hard, I wouldn't expect them to go so hard for it while being as openly hypocritical as they are, or as you'd have to notice them being in regards to the other social media platforms that also have security risks but are just American owned.